and we also gather in a group. We were paying attention to the weather report, and the weather report seemed to indicate there'd be really strong winds and and rain stretching out to this period. And of course, once we posted that we were going to do it online, the sun came out. So that's unfortunate, but here we are. Let's see. So I think we are right about at that time. And okay. One of the things, I'm not going to try to look for it, but yesterday we're going over some of Sensei's words. And one of the things he said was very interesting. He said, stand on the floating bridge of heaven. And he said, you don't basically stretch upward towards heaven, nor do you lean on the earth. All right. So there's that point between the heavenly, the finer, the denser. And one of the senses, you're kind of suspended between those two. It's almost like that's infinite, that's infinite. You're positioning yourself. Now, how do you position yourself through two infinities? Because infinity is immeasurable. So that's the best we can do. And now, right now, for example, we're not standing. I'm sitting. So sitting between heaven and earth, the floating bridge. Last night, the Do Sensei was doing a class. We're usually talking about this direction. As you go out from beginning point, everything gets denser, but it all comes back towards kind of the more original, the finer, then it goes back out. So there's kind of what we call kind of a, but there's also at that particular time, there's also the not reaching for that or pushing off to that, but just simply positioning. My mind wants to wander and try to figure it out. But, So not purely what you call meditation, but on the other hand, you are positioning. And that's always going to go on. That's always going to go on. And this position is always going to go on. But there's movement. There's this movement here, right? Going out, coming back, going out, coming back. So once you get that position, you are trying to consolidate a type of attunement. So you're positioning self between heaven and earth, and then also there's a movement of the universe, Big Bang. This might be going on much faster than we can imagine. And checking your breathing there. So when I position there, I'm much more alert. I'm conscious of the sun outside when we thought it was going to rain and the winds were going to blow us apart. But it didn't happen. But I can be right here, right now. If I drift, which is natural, I just reposition. My breathing starts to kind of get more rhythmic. Sensei talks about purifying the senses, the five obvious ones. And then he said there's a sixth one. See, what I can see or hear or touch, feel, or what I can taste or smell, those are obvious. But when I'm too caught up in all this motion, self-emotion with itself, movement of the creation, all this sensory data tends to kind of keep me caught up in what I call a fairly limited level of I. So as we start to go back towards the positioning, again, what he was saying, don't stretch towards heaven or push towards earth. So part of this we call the consolidation, the process. It's a process. Another way of calling it is misogi. I'm consumed about the second impeachment and critical of da-da-da-da. When I'm doing that, it's good to be conscious of it. But there are other truths going on here. And one of the reasons why there's impeachment, and depending on whether you want acquittal or you want conviction, is because we've drifted so far away from an original balance that we go into factions. And so positioning yourself. I'm going to go towards my heavenly aspirations, or conversely go into maybe a more combative sense of. And there's constant movement and change in the world. Yesterday we had 5,000 deaths due to the coronavirus, and yet the actual pandemic is supposedly slowing down. So there's a lot of information. Position. One of the other things, though, Sensei says, when you start to judge things good and evil, you start to lose it. Now the question is there good and evil? He didn't say there wasn't. But the word judge. As we position, we discern, not judge. A little bit of a difference. Yes, there is good, there is evil. But I'm in a judgment about good and evil. I get caught up into this, so we're going to just position. One thing that Sensei told Sadaharu was learn to wait. And that might have been his particular thing for Mr. O. How do you stand on the floating bridge of heaven? You're a baseball player. You're a hitter. Learn to wait. And we'll move off of that position because of the movement here and the movement here. But settling, centering, that position is always there. Wada Sensei might tell us is the floating bridge is always ever present, just as this is going on and this is going on. In positioning, you lose it, you reposition. And as we go deeper into that experience, there's a consolidation. And then as we free the senses, you call the sixth senses, as they are cleared, we discern. So that's an important one. Okay, so that's just not necessarily reading from his words, but we kind of take the words and research them interiorly, experientially. Okay, so okay, and okay, there, and you can use a longer one. It's just the space is more limited here, so now if we were to make a ritual out of it, we'd kind of go like this, and we would go into the words. The up and down of self is going on. And out and back, back and out of the universe. Oh, is going on. Position. Now off of that, there's emotion. Now most of you, depending on who's here today, just said somewhat conversant with. And again, I'm using the shorter one because I don't want to smash a window if I get too carried away. Just beginning to move. Okay, now I start to move. I get caught up in the movement here and here. Reposition. And the movement. We're really talking about I move. That's a tricky one. I'm moving a movement. It starts that way. We're going to go into 30. Movement set. The misogi, the gyo, and just a little bit. But now here, we're picking up the movement of the center and the circle. Right now, the movement's out there. Then we're also doing the fire water changes. Oops. From down, from up, from down, from up. Figure 8, from up. Okay, from down. Boom. Right. Figure 8. Double figure 8, 2 hands. Boom. Boom. The patterns kind of interweave. There's the movement of the universe coming out of the point, going out, Big Bang, to, and there's also the movement of self along with that. Finer, 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 denser, 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 deeper. Now, one of the things that happens is that, finer, denser, deeper is important. You can keep going from here to here. Spiritual aspirations, material needs. Primal pool, ocean. It all gathers in, goes into soothe and move the creation. But there's also self-positioning. Not stretching, stretch towards heaven, push towards earth. And move. Energy is going out, 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 out. Denser, denser, denser. Boom, coming back towards the beginning. Finer, 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 finer. What I'm picking up right there is, the four corners and the four sides. Boom. So we're taking we're adding certain movements like, boom, boom, boom. And then back to the positioning. Again, not stretching towards heaven or pushing towards the earth. Easy in both directions, but not drifting. Check my breathing, it's deeper and more rhythmic. Going towards what I would call breath. Still going in and out with the actual breathing, but more towards breath. Conscious of things getting denser, heavier, but also lighter, freer, both going on. Part of me wants to kind of go, but also part of me wants to kind of spiral up. They're both going on. Self positions, not, let's spend a lifetime doing that or a lifetime doing this. Being easy in both directions. We'll go side to side, out and back, goes that way, back. And really when it goes that way, it's also going that way. It's going that way, it's also going that way. You start to get the sense when you're going this way, that you're really getting this the circle. And if there's a circle this way, there's a circle this way. And there's a center that aligns to both. You can't really have a circle without a center. Conversely, if you have a center, there'll be a circle. And right there, I was saying I was picking up corner, 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 side, 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 side. So you can start to play the 8 directions. Yeah, you can do that for an hour or 2 minutes or 2 seconds. Reposition. Again, not stretching towards heaven, not leaning on the earth. Easy in both directions. Easy in both directions. Yourself in motion, aspiring spiritually, finer, connecting to a more substantial sound. And there's self. There's a movement of energies in the creation. Those things they call the ka and the ni, fire, water movements. And all of that's going on. Yeah. Back to reposition. Again, not stretching towards or leaning against. What does that mean? Easy in that direction, easy in that direction. But again, there's a movement of energies and self moving with those energies. Self is in all of these. As I keep getting a bit more into the position, it starts to consolidate into self as a transparency. It's forward, there's motion. It can be fast, boom, boom, leisurely. But self is kind of like that transparency, that clear, that calm. And again, checking the alignment. So okay, so here we are a bit. Just thought before we start to go into, let's just say, the 30 movements, but just curious, anybody, anything you want to share about that? So we kind of explored a little bit on our level, maybe what Osensei might have meant by standing on the floating bridge of heaven. Anybody with a question or comment on that? Yeah.
One thing, the week that you had a back injury and David was teaching, that he brought up a little detail that was really helpful to me.
Okay.
That when you're holding it like this or holding it like this, that's completely straight up and down and not leaning in any direction, so that there's no force vector going. That's my interpretation. There's no force vector going sideways. It's just straight up and down. And that I've been focusing on that in the time holding the pole straight, and that really helps. It helps like align my whole body and everything. So I just thought.
Well, one of the things about the floating bridge is probably that, you know, what happens is tempting, because you get to generate a force vector. You want to generate a bigger one or a stronger one. all right? And conversely, you don't want to, your force vector diminished. You see what I mean? That the whole thing sort of becomes like, you got to win, okay? It's a very interesting thing. But when you're that transparency, and to some degree operating as that transparency, yeah, they're going to be force vectors generated by the movement of the key. You see what I mean? That's what we're aspiring to. I mean, I would assume, this is my theory of the moment, that's where O-sensei stood. As a self that was or soul, a spirit, a lot of fancy words there, that was totally transparent. And at his level, the movement of creation was almost divine or divine. So he called the parent forces, fire, water, kami. Okay? And then, from those two forces going this way, there were other sub-forces, we were progeny. The whole universe was created out of a big bang. Okay, but but the act of two forces coming together in some inconceivable generates the birth of creation, but also self in motion with the creation. And here we are. It's like that TV show, it all started with a big bang. Okay, who we are? Well, we got Sheldon, we got, we got the rest of them. We got Penny and wow, okay, you see what I mean? So here we are, the Big Bang. And it's amusing to follow characters like Sheldon, all right? Leonard, Penny, there are others, Rashish, we're in this, you can make it into a situation comedy or a huge drama. Right now, we're kind of a rather strange place right now because of the pandemic and the impeachment trial and all this stuff is going on. But the floating bridge is also going on. And so, that part of it is fascinating to me. Anybody else with a question or comment? Right there, we're usually outside moving, unfortunately. There was, we decided don't want to risk it. Go out there, set everything up, and all of a sudden, the wind's too strong, it starts to rain, so we just decided to play it safe. Anybody else with a question or comment on that?
I just want to say thank you for that answer. That's helpful.
Yeah, no. One of the things about it, when you, it's almost like your position here. In that place, I thought was very interesting. You don't stretch or lean. It's just purely position. And there's also fire, water, fire as parents doing their thing in some mysterious plane. And all of a sudden, boom, ignition, big bang, creation. And here we are in creation as a child of those two forces, fire, water. Sensei like Izanagi, Izanami, Susano, Amaterasu. Okay. And then in creation is both self-moving in creation and also those energies, procreating and creating offspring and boom, 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 boom. So, but there's also that original position. And increasingly, the consolidation as, okay, and I'm going to go out there, I generate a better force vector. Boom, 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 boom. All right, yeah. Boom, 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 boom. But self is also self at any point. Boom, 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 boom. So that's part of what I would say a little bit, kind of doing my own work with this or another long staff or whatever it is. I don't want to do it too get too crazy with this stuff, you might destroy your mirror or smash something. So, and really creation, when it's really going boom, 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 is wild. But there's also that transparency right there. You're neither really the one that's, you're more you're more the position right here. And you're also positioning yourself within kind of whatever you call the parent forces of fire and water. Okay. Anybody else with a question or comment? That's what you call more improv. I don't know. You can, I mean, what happens if you make it into a form, you create a ritual. If it's a ritual, it's a replication of something that was very important, but as the generations go, it becomes more ritual. And the sacred, part of the original nature of it, kind of gets confined in structure and politics. And the original nature of the Constitution is beautiful. Now we have an incredibly bipartisan country. Okay. All right. And both sides can quote the Constitution for their own benefit. It's crazy. All right. And you can get caught up in this or that, which we do. But when you're positioning there, again, our sensei said, don't judge things good or evil. That does not mean that there is not good and there's not evil, but the act of judging. But there's discernment. And discernment is kind of self as that sword or spear. Yeah, you're going to be caught up in the movement here. And you're also going to be going up and down, depending on, just who you are in that moment, But it's discernment cuts through all that. In some sense, I think, what our sensei was talking about, when he said stand on the floating bridge, is stand in discernment. And from there, what's good is very, very obvious. What's evil is very, very obvious. It's a discernment, not a judgment. And off of that, then there's a beauty to creation. Even very trying times, you, to some degree, become creation. And you become loving, harmonious, beautiful, powerful creation. And in that way, you claim yourself as a child of, and therefore, kami. All right? And that if I was going to try to explain maybe O Sensei's thing, that's pretty much what I would do. Okay? I'd lay it out that way as best I could. Okay. But anyway, before we kind of move on, anybody with a question or comment on that? Okay. Something may come up. But what we're going to do, now a lot of the freer stuff is difficult. So, we off of that, we sort of have created this 30 movement thing, okay? And this is purely designed for you or me to give you a working model of what we discussed. And the degree to which it kind of takes a life of its own on. Well, what you're doing is you're taking something that's sacred and making it overly social to where the sacred nature of it is lost. On the other hand, if you have a pretty good discernment over what is sacred and what is purely just social, then that's okay. You're not caught in the ritual of defending this or that. I mean, that's what the impeachment is about. It's very, very sad to see. It's so sad to see, just the division of, such partisan beliefs. Now, I have my own beliefs, which I'm not going to share, but I think you probably know where they are. But in the spirit of kind of positioning and the best I can stand on that floating bridge, we're not going to get into a personal belief. Okay? So we're going to, okay. So I'm going to clear out a little bit of space. Now, and to give myself a little better full body shot, yes. So we go over this motion. Just say that, we're positioning here. I'm drawn there, and I just want to move and train. Positioning. Both are going on. You'll have times when you want to spend more time here, more time when you want to do that. And that position, I want to consolidate here. Not in my mind, not in a rigid belief system. Now we're putting this here. And we're addressing the two parent forces. We call that one fire, call this one water. And then and what happens is, those parent forces manifest in form, space, time, matter, energy, whatever we can. Here. And here. This is one motion. And this is a repeat. Okay, now I'm going to change angles. You should, this is based on front back. I'll just get it here. And then here. And then here. And 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 here. This position. Two-handed figure eight. Back. Back. Cover. Turn. And we have 30 movements. What they do is they give you the thrust form. Yeah, they give you the strike form. They give you first hand change, Nikyo. Second hand change, Nikyo. Third hand change, Sankyo. Fourth change is really back to the Ikkyo hand position with the body itself. Okay, and the fifth change, go kill. So all of that's there. Okay, now from here, boom, boom, boom. Okay, now, what's not so obvious is before we did that, we reposition. Boom, 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 boom. Reposition. There's another series of movements. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, and these are all just, now you have the first change, second change, third change, fourth change, fifth change. and you have your basic thrust of the motion. Now you can also, by turning, they become sweeping motions. Ooh, 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 ooh. So you see that the actual sequence of it is to transmit basics. Okay, now it's good, since we're working that, to have a precision with it. Okay, but you again, you want to learn the structure so you can get rid of it. You can be free of it. And there's levels of that. That's what makes it a misogi. You can get better at the movement, but are we getting better at ourselves, at positioning ourselves between, the certain truths are very, very evident. And then there's the reality of positioning on our level of that floating bridge place. Okay. So let's go over the 30 again. I'll do it from this angle here. Movement number 1. Movement number 2. Movement number 3. Movement number 4. Movement number 5. 6. 7 is both up and down. 8 is a repeat. 9. 10. Now, second change, 11. 12. 13. 14. 15. 16. 17. 18. 19. 20. 21. 22. 23. 24. 25. 26. 27. 28. 29. And 30. Okay? Right. So, taking a second or two, taking a break. Anybody with a question or comment? So again, the 30 movements are to introduce certain things. Now, it's very possible to turn that into ritual. So there's kind of a catch-22. If you get too good at it as a form, it's a ritual. On the other hand, if you don't know it, you can sort of get lost in being a little too free when you improvise. Okay? So there's kind of a balancing. Again, there's you position yourself here and here. So you know it, so you can let go of it. If you don't know it, you can't let go of it. But if you know it and get trapped in it, you're caught in it. That's why it's a misogi or a gyo, using Japanese terms. It's not a kata. Okay? Anybody with a question or any new insights into any of the movements?
Sensei,
Yeah.
I do have one question.
Sure.
Is the important ingredient that makes the difference between a gyo and a kata, or like some other thing like a drill, is the important thing that the thing gets let go of? Like you do a thing for a while and then you let go of it, and that makes the difference between a misogi and just a drill?
Well, for me, okay, if it's just a kata, the movements get better. You don't necessarily get better. What makes the gyo is that as you get better, as I goes more towards itself in a truer level, the movements improve. Okay, that's what makes it a gyo or a misogi. And so the movements, you know, they're a little bit like, okay, I can reproduce the pattern, but I'm not caught up in it. And I also know the importance of, when we really talk about centering or grounding, we're really talking about positioning. Where am I in this crazy world? And where is the floating bridge? I'm too caught up in bipartisan politics and, you know, and the pandemic. No, I mean, we're in it. I and my partner Al, we got vaccinated a couple of days ago. Let me tell you, even though that's not just the actual act of getting that needle in your arm. There are so many other factors. We got to get another shot in about 4 weeks, and then, you know, there's all this stuff, all this information. But I'm not going to sit around and say the kami will protect me. They might, but you get that shot in your arm. And, you know, you try to go online and you try to schedule an appointment, and you find out you can't. Okay, so we wound up going to a walk-up, the Mexican Heritage Plaza on Allenbrook. That was actually very well done. We got in. We didn't know what was going to happen. We had to stand in line, but that's worth doing. Socially distanced with masks. See, none of this is about, okay, I'm going to be so spiritual that the coronavirus can't get me. Or conversely, you know, I'm going to be so riled up by what's going on that I develop another disease waiting for, or, you know, basically, you know, get high blood pressure because of, you know, all the tension in my system. There's that positioning. So, you know, the whole thing, however, it's nice to have a vaccine. Okay? I'm glad we got it in pretty much record time. And it's available on a limited basis. And trying to get to where that vaccine is problematic for most people. So I was, you know, the walk-up clinic was nice because you were so isolated. I mean, we're not supposed to go up and, you know, interact that much, but it's nice to be around people, to be honest with you. Now, see, people, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, the world still exists, humanity still exists, all right? But, you know, you position and reposition. I mean, Sensei's floating bridge thing wasn't meant to be this, the floating bridge of heaven. Well, that's a bunch of crap. Let's just train and get strong. It wasn't meant to be, you know, just some weird thing you'd think about, nor consciously to be ignored. At any point, we have a choice to position or not. If I'm getting a little too this way, or a little too this way, there's that position. What does that mean? Easy in that direction, easy in that direction. And right there, right in the middle, there's what you call discernment. Believe in the power of the universe and an original design of perfection, and get vaccinated. That, I don't know if that makes any sense or not, but that's pretty much the reality of it. Okay. Anybody else or anything else on that particular thing? Are the movements becoming a little clearer to you? No? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, you don't get it overnight, but on the other hand, yeah. Okay. And I'm trying to present it in a way, you know, we could become military and just do 1 through 30. There are organizations and Aikido groups that do that. Okay, but I'd rather kind of say, okay, this is what makes it a misogi. I want everybody to be able to go 1 through 30. But then you get it and you get certified, you don't practice it, and then you forget it. Or conversely, you continue because there are other levels. So we're going to do several levels of certification. But the overriding thing we're doing is following O-sensei's instructions about positioning. Consolidation is basically where you say you're walking a path as opposed to, I got it. Because when you got it, you'll get lazy and stop. And you'll have had it, at least the structure of it, and then somebody says, do the 30 in 6 months, and you can't remember it. Well, guess what? That's not being free of it. Okay? Now, we have a pandemic here, okay? And just the fact that you're spiritual and pray or do all this stuff does not necessarily mean that you won't get it. You see what I mean? Because the universe itself, demands that you check this, you position, you discern, you act responsibly and according to that position. And then for that moment, self is consolidated through your actions, your positioning. Okay, so that for me is why I kind of look at it as a misogi, a gyo, not a kata. Okay? I remember Hikizuchi Sensei taught Linda, myself, the first half of the Bojutsu, which was the long staff. And so we didn't know the whole movement. I had a karate background and a tai chi background. So I was used to, okay, this is, so, but we were confused about the second half. Okay, so, guess what? And this was, a private session. And then what happened is, so we go up to Tojima Sensei and said, well, we're kind of unclear about. And so he goes through, it's a standard set. And he goes through the set with us. So he teaches us his version of the second part of it. And since, that it's reinforced, we start to get it. Now, sequentially, it's pretty much what Hikizuchi Sensei was teaching. I still probably, because there were some shifts in it as time went on, but I still pretty much do it the way Tojima Sensei taught me that second half, if I do it, okay? And a lot of the 30 movements are based upon part of that, okay? But what happened is it raised the stink because Hikizuchi Sensei taught Linda and myself personally and privately, and he wasn't teaching the Japanese that. Tojima Sensei knew it because at one point, the whole dojo was doing it, and I suspect more than anything else, they took what they saw Sensei do, and they kind of agreed upon a kind of set. I don't know that O-sensei did that sequence. In fact, I asked Tojima Sensei what it was like. He said, oh, O-sensei would go and go ikkyo, nikkyo, sankyo, yonkyo, gokyo, and nobody understood anything, and he said, practice. That's all one thing. And he looked at me and says, boy, that was a real pain in the butt. None of us knew what we were supposed to practice. But I suspect what O-sensei was saying, watch my position. Watch me stand on that bridge. Watch me as I balance out between the fire-water forces and me standing somewhere between heaven and earth. all these shapes and forms come out of that. And I got number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Practice. There's that one thing that gives birth to everything. Okay? And Hikizuchi Sensei, I found out, was very critical of the way Tojima Sensei did. And he would constantly tell me why Tojima Sensei was doing it wrong, but he was doing basically the same thing. So you run into politics, all right? Are you in the Hikizuchi camp or are you in the Tojima camp? After a while, it's stupid to say you're this or that. You may find your own system. You kind of like this approach better than that approach, but they're both part of the collective, right? And so, that's one of the problems in the country is like, we're supposed to be a democracy, a republic, and there's a constitution, and now you have this bipartisan stuff, and you have tremendous crimes against humanity that really are allowed to go because of bipartisan politics. It's tragic, all right? And there's this positioning. And there's the consolidation, and there's the discernment. It's hard. It's razor's edge. You go over here, you're off. You go over here, you're off. And we're going to do that, but we reposition. That's ukemi. You fall down, you get back up. You attack, there's a movement, you blend with it. Okay? Anybody else with anything on that? Okay, then what we're going to do, we're going to go back over it again. Repetition is good as long as you understand what the repetition is for. I mean, probably the number of Bojutsu classes I had is probably less than 20. Throughout, I was in Shingu for 2 short years and pretty much 1 complete year, and that was it. Boom. And you were supposed to pick it up, work on it on your own. So what we're going to do is go back over that motion. So you have the positioning here. And you have that position where you are neither reaching, stretching for that, or leaning on that. And what does that mean again? You're easy in that direction and easy in that direction. And then there are the forces of fire and water emerging from. That's 1, 2. I look upon that as fire. I look upon that as water. You don't have to make that, just be precise what you do. You're making sure the balance between those two. Whoa, it's also moving here, but you're positioning between this and that, and this and that. Then we go into the world of form. This is the left side, left hand. This is again one move, both up and down. And then this is repeat. Hand change, second change. Boom. Boom. Third change. Boom. Boom. Back to the second change for a bit. Fourth change, hand change is the first one, but right? Now we're back to the second change. And here, this is important. You're not going to impale yourself. This is, in theory, a spear as well. Rotate the hip. Sweet. Okay, this is the fifth change. Two-handed figure 8. Boom. Step back. step back again. Turn, cover. No step, just a turn. Okay. Now try that on your own. Okay, let's check in. So again, that's 30 movements. Okay. I remember Bruce Lee came upon, he created what he created or whatever it was. He began to call it Jeet Kune Do. And we found everybody was making it into a style, right? And what he told them is like, if you really persist in making this into a style, like I studied with Bruce Lee, this is Bruce Lee's martial arts called Jeet Kune Do. He says, it's just a name. I'll change it if it gets too crazy. Okay, I'll change it. I'll call it something else. Okay, so the movements have a purpose. On the other hand, when you start to make them too much into a form or a ritual, you start to go from the sacred into the social. We like things, okay? We really like structure because, right? Okay. But I mean, if you look at what democracy is really supposed to be, it's really supposed to be, use the Stephen Curry term, it's supposed to be organized chaos. The chaos is freedom, but it's organized. We have rights, so do other people. And we could very easily just make one person the dictator. It's been tried lately. In which case, hey, you probably would have a lot of order. Okay, what is organized chaos? It's freedom. What is freedom? Freedom can be fun. If you over-organize something and make it terribly, thou shalt do this, you oftentimes, there's too much structure, there's no fun. On the other hand, if it's not somewhat organized, the chaos can be very destructive or can go into some sort of stagnation. Okay? So we're looking at, there's that fine line. That's what makes it a misogi or kyo. And so, one of the things is that constant repositioning. All right, you have the finer structure of things, the finer laws, and then you have things as they come down, and there's a tendency to make them into things. All right, it's open, and just to be able to position yourself is very important. And so, using O Sensei's model, we're neither stretching towards heaven nor leaning on the earth. And what does that mean? Easy in that direction, easy in that direction. There is accountability, there is structure. But what I want is organized chaos. I want freedom. And sometimes you pay a price for it. It's not free. But as we get a little bit more towards the more original of ourselves, then there's an increasing freedom. Okay? Ikizuchi Sensei said something once. He just says, Ningen dattara ruru ga nai. Kami-sama dattara ruru ga aru. It was kind of, it was interesting. He says, for human beings, there are no rules. But for the kami, there are. You're saying there are principles. Okay? You start to move too much into chaos, you reposition. If you start to get a little too rigid, you reposition. And then the actual movement here comes off of that balance. Now, the whole world is in such crazy imbalance right now that, it's difficult for us. But we can, during this period, get better if we understand that part of, I think, O Sensei's teaching. Okay? Let's now this becomes ritual. So it's there. And boom, 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 boom. Okay. So let's get a try at it. Position, you can't go, okay, wait. Don't attack me yet. All right. But just in an instant, boom, you're right there, and then boom. Boom, 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 boom. Organized chaos. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Yeah. Reposition. 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 And initially we're messing around, but we're doing it respectfully. Respectfully. And reposition. explore. You gotta, again, respectfully mess around. You still have the structure, but increasingly, okay. Any, just checking in. Anybody, observation, question?
I think this is just something I'm gonna have to practice, like doing a bunch of moves and then
Yeah.
recentering. And
Yeah.
I have found in recent weeks that apparently a year of social isolation and practicing on my Joe has made me slightly better at Joe. And now I can, because of the 30 moves, I can take some of the moves out of context and throw them in when I'm doing freestyle and build on them.
I've been messing around for over 40 years. Okay. I mean, a lot of times, what happens is like, you can't do that. All right. Well, Chet Baker, he goes to, his mother makes him enter singing contests. Okay. And his father starts to think that he's becoming too much of a wimp. And so his father buys him a trombone. Because he really likes Jack Teagarden. Okay, so what happens is Baker's so small, he can't fully create all the notes off of the trombone slide. So his father gets him a trumpet. Because he also likes Big Spider Bat. These are names from the music in the 20s and 30s, right? And the way Baker put it, so it was love at first sight. And so somebody says, well, did you get a lot of instruction? He said, yeah, just basic. You got to learn how to create the notes. Like when I took up trumpet in 5th grade, and I learned the notes just because, I just learned the song America, da, 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 da. And initially you write, there are 3 vowels, right? Da, 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 da. Okay. Baker obviously was much better than I was. But what happens is, according to his mom, a couple of weeks after he's, gets a little bit of his very, very rudimentary instruction on how to play the instrument, he's picking apart Harry James' 12 o'clock jump or something on the radio. He would hear it and he would play it. Da, 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 da. This is after a couple of weeks, so I don't know. His music teacher told him, "You can't do that." And so what he would do is he would just listen to music on the radio and he would play it. And the way he put it, it became a problem because and this is somewhat disputed, is that he never learned to read music because if he could hear it, he could play it. And no, somebody didn't tell him, you can't do that yet. You've been only playing the trumpet for 2 weeks. There's no way you can go out there and play Harry James music. Because he did it. He didn't listen. And so, we create what's called premature cognitive commitments, which means that in our mind, We can't do something because it's been drilled into us, we can't do it. Okay? And it's like an elephant. There's a little baby elephant, you tie it with a rope to a tiny little tree, and it can't move. And then it grows into a huge, huge, powerful elephant that can rip that tree out. And you put the same rope on it and tie it to the rope, and it just has this premature cognitive commitment, and it won't move. And so, you know, a lot of what we're battling is our premature cognitive commitments, much of which is socially drummed into us from a young age. And some of that is, you know, no, don't jump off the, you know, the Empire State Building just because you watched the Superman movie. Okay, some of that is necessary. Our parents have to tell us, don't do that. All right? I remember, you know, my grandmother on my dad's side, you know, she was with us for a while when I was pretty young. And we were watching The Adventures of Superman with George Reeves, right? And she was going crazy. And so my dad had to say, no, that's all fake. Because culturally, she was so distant from it that, you know, there was this TV show and there was George Reeves doing all this stuff. And she thought, oh my God. And so my dad said, no, that's all just special effects, Mom. And that was pretty interesting. You know, there's a certain area where we need a certain amount of structure. But, you know, there's an area where you're going to respectfully mess around with that. And so a little bit with the stuff, you know, with the staff, the positioning, that's what you're doing. I'm just trying to teach you to respectfully mess around. What is that going to do? That should help you learn the 30 better. Okay. But it also, then the 30 movements don't become a type of ritual. And somehow, you know, the sacred, you know, is very fluid. It's not necessarily free because there's accountability there. As Hikizuchi Sensei said, you know, for human beings, oh, look, I mean, we do have rules and laws, but they're violated all the time. Okay? We had a leader of our country that was lying and lying and lying and really provoked an insurrection. And I understand they're voting right now. He will probably be acquitted. Okay. All right. So much for laws. So much for rules. Okay. It's more like whatever you can get away with. Okay. But what Osensei was talking about, there is accountability at that level, but you are in alignment with the process of creation. And in doing that, there's a lot of freedom that's missed when I'm kind of polarized this way or that way. So when he said, Kami-sama dattara rudu ga aru, which I assume Hikizuchi Sensei got from O Sensei, all right, is that, yeah, for the larger, more sacred, we see, you know, we're able to discern good, evil. Once you can do that, there's a certain amount of freedom you have, which is much bigger than breaking rules. Okay? And so that part of it is somewhat, you know, I mean, we're looking at, you know, why Aikido can be very relevant now. It's okay. We learn about positioning. We talk about centering. We're really talking about positioning. There's the Constitution and its spirit, and there's partisan politics and corruption, and there's position. What do we discern? Which is different than getting out there and judging. And there's a certain amount of freedom What do you get? I mean, I would really like the vote to go a certain way because I do have. Am I likely to get what I want? No. Okay. But I don't want to let that destroy me or destroy my spirit. And I don't have to like it. Okay.
It's over.
Yeah. Yep. Anyway, let's go back and just start it out this. And this may be a little much for you. But position. And position. And position. You may like the creativity of it. You might like the boom potential, martialness of it. But position. Position. Boom, 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 boom. And position. And that's all what I call respectfully messing around. And our objective is organized chaos. All right? Yes.
I've got the chaos part down. Working
Yeah,
on the
no,
organization.
no. That part of it is, it's scary, but as you hang out with it, it's liberating. And one thing Bruce Lee was into, he was into liberation. Liberation is not necessarily what you call freedom. Okay, liberation is, you deal with the circumstances, and you're not, you're connected to them, but you're also independent of them. My personal happiness is dependent upon Donald Trump getting convicted. I just found out that not going to work. And I have my own feelings around it. But on the other hand, I don't want to get dragged down. Now, the pandemic is another. Why in the world do I feel so much better? Because I got a shot in my arm on Thursday. I got to wait 4 more weeks, and then I get another one. All right, and the whole thing could go bad in the 4 weeks, and I get my second one. I got to wait another 2 weeks. So, it's really, you're trapped in a type of space-time maze. Okay, and we have to behave respectfully and intelligently within that maze, that structure. And on the other hand, I can, the liberation is that I can reposition, hopefully be a part of the design of creation, the universe. And Usensei, as he got more original with it, he said it's a loving creation. It's balanced. And yes, and there's the kind of the stupidity that goes on in this level of it. If I get too crushed by it, I don't make the journey back to where I can experience some degree of not freedom, but liberation. That doesn't mean, you give up and just go into the mountains or something like that, although, a certain amount where you have freedom to do it. How to be free in a world that's not. How to be sane in a world that sometimes is not at all sane. And so, I think Osensei left Aikido so that we would be able to do that. Yeah, there's good, there's evil. But we don't judge it. We discern it. And we respectfully mess around so that we can learn to create positive, loving, harmonious, organized chaos. So, that's just my view on this crazy day. And, so if you're learning the 3D build better, that's a step. But I just want you to get that that's, it's not a holy writ. The other one of my great role models is a British actor, Patrick Macnee. And, in 1960 or 61, he's a British actor who's got limited work. And he wants to go into producing. But somebody offers him an insane amount of money to be in a spy show called The Avengers. And so, he gets a script, and there's absolutely no guidelines. He looks at it, says, Steed stands there. And there's nothing in the script or that the producers let him know about who Steed is. And so he has to create John Steed. Totally. In fact, what they do is say, well, Patrick, and they give him the James Bond books. And he reads them and says, that's not me. And so he creates this character, which I prefer infinitely to James Bond, who learns, he treats women well, he refuses to resolve conflict with a gun except when absolutely necessary. He relies more on a certain amount of wit and style and aplomb. And he's smart enough to step out of the way and let Diana Rigg resolve most issues. And where she can't, he compliments her, okay? And most of the time, she rescues him. And that takes great strength for a man. And so a lot of times like that, he had absolutely no guidelines. You're a spy, read the Bond books, he said. Absolutely not. And so a lot of times you have your influences, right? And, Chet Baker, is playing. And he starts listening to Birth of the Cool, to Miles Davis. Very, 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 very important record. And the way he put it is he didn't copy Miles. Miles let him know a little bit more about who he was. So, like that, it's like, okay, I'm going to be the next Miles Davis. No, this is No, this is very lyrical. Oh, it's jazz, it's bop, but it's lyrical. And so that's what he wound up doing. You know? And so that's kind of the way things work. So anyway, anybody with a question or comment? So we covered a bit more of the 30, slowed it down, trying to give you a bit of perspective. It's doable. Also try to give it a sense where don't make it into Holy Writ, but learn it. Also, we start to cover a little bit more what O-sensei might have meant, at least my interpretation of standing on the floating bridge, is position. It's not necessarily, I'm going to center. Yes, you will, but your positioning, don't stretch towards heaven, don't lean on earth. What does that mean? Easy in both directions, right here, right now. And whatever's going on in the world, good, bad, ridiculous, sublime, you have that position. And you have the ability to discern. Okay? And that's important. There is good and evil. But then that's bad, that's evil, that's good. All of a sudden we're out there, we're not standing there anymore. Discernment says, yeah, clearly that's this, and this is that. And I'm going to act in accord with that discernment. And I may get more discernment as I continue to stand here. Okay? Okay. So anyway, we're going to respectfully, I'm just telling you, our goals, respectfully mess around with it. Just learn the 30 movements, respectfully mess with it. Learn to create organized chaos. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sensei.